Body is a wish-fulfilling dream. Your speech is supreme, and your mind is refuge for all needs. All the hands are turned supreme, unchanging friend. I request from the depths of my heart, give me the light of your wisdom to dispel the darkness of my mind and to heal my mental continuum. Nourish me with your goodness, that I in turn may nourish all with an unceasing banquet of delight. Compassion, your blessings, virtues, and my strong to rely upon you. May all suffering quickly cease, and all happiness and joy be fulfilled. It's the strangest. So when you see me with tears falling, it means absolutely nothing. It doesn't mean anything is wrong. Mostly it means I'm deeply moved, which I am this morning. Last night I put the part one of Samuel on, and I cut it out so it just keeps rotating all night. And when I listen to it with that analyzing mind, I say, oh, this is not saying that much. Can we get on with it? When we're going to get on to some other things. But it's not about getting on to knowing more things. It's really about penetrating to the deepest truth of each thing that we get. And so we understand in increments. And progress on this path is not how many things we know, but how fully we can go into whatever we know. And if we keep that in mind, we wouldn't we wouldn't feel compelled to exert a lot of effort in learning new things. There were some of the Buddha's disciples, I can't say it enough times, that only heard one Dharma talk. So, they didn't get much, but they penetrated so deeply into that one teaching that they got from the Buddha that they attained. Now, how is this possible? you might ask. And if we rely on the seen Buddha and the information that comes through that source, then one might figure that it would be impossible for anyone to have become an arhat just having one discourse from the Buddha. Hello. But what we have to understand that it is not the actual figure that we see that's trapped in or that's contained by this, as Buddha Master calls it, smelly skin bag. But it is the power of prajna and the fullness of the primordial emptiness that's contained in that body. That is what we have encountered. And sometimes we can get so enamored with that which appears like us that we miss the true substance of the encounter, and we're left lacking. But almost daily, I can tell you, I have a visitation in some kind of way with the Tathagata that for a while was resident in the body of who we call Dorje Chain Buddha III. And I can't explain how it is to you because this is something that you have to have a direct experience of. And then one gets over oneself and one gets over others too. So, I can't see you. Could you move right there and you move right there? Thank you. Because I never know when there's a message for somebody and I have to look right at them. You know, I don't say anything, I just look at them. Yeah, thanks. So I guess we'll never be able to get but so big, huh? I have to get better with that. So today I wanted to encourage us, and we're going to close a little early because there's something I want to share, and I don't have permission, or I could just say I got to know on being able to share it openly in the Dharma talk because this is going up on YouTube, and I do want to share something with you. So we'll close early so that I can just share it with who's present. If you weren't here, you missed it. And maybe I'll share it another time. But I think it's important to share with you more fully our direction. And I could say as it's unfolding, but it's not really unfolding. It has already been unfolded. And we are going with it as opposed to doing something. And it's amazing to me how little we really retain of what we hear. It's amazing to me how we don't see something until after something else becomes apparent and go back and like, we saw it, there it was all along. There it was being said all along. Or sometimes we can hear something again and again and again. And there's just one particular way of hearing it that it opens up our understanding in a different way. But if we had not put anything in there, if we had not nurtured any soil, then when we heard that thing, it would have no space or no base upon which to grow and mature into something. So that would be like seed that's just falling on rocky ground. it can't get a footing. It can't catch, it can't take hold, and nothing can sprout. So there's two parts. There's the part of cultivating or developing the soil and the planting of the seed. And the seed without the soil is no good. And the soil without the seed won't produce anything. And we have to know whether it's time to prepare the soil or whether it's time for us to get and plant the seeds. And if we do them out of sequence, we won't have the best results. If we do them in the wrong season, we won't have the best results. So there's a lot involved in undertaking the planting of seeds if one wants to have a harvest. A lot of things can happen. I used to have butterfly trees, bushes at the last center that we had. And we planted all of these butterfly bushes. But I didn't realize that we had to put netting around so that they would have a chance to, I don't know what you call them, the caterpillars, the larvae, whatever, becomes butterflies. I didn't know we had to protect them in certain stages. So the first year, we didn't see that many, but it wasn't because there weren't that many. It was because it got picked off, in their vulnerable stages. And so when we put the netting up the next year, we had hundreds and hundreds of butterfly bushes. The butterfly bushes attracted the fairies. Fairies, like, I don't know what that is. I read about it in a book and I'm done. I'm like, it's a good thought, I like the pictures. I'm through. But one day, the little girl from next door came up, and she squatted down and she said, "Can I go and play with the purple lady, the little purple lady?" And I said, "What little purple lady?" She said, "The little purple lady right there." And it was me, I think it was Deepa, and two other song members. Maybe Deepa wasn't there for that one. But we looked and we saw the purple lady for the first time. It was just a little fairy looking like in the books, being like this, that had come as a result of the butterfly bushes that we had killed. So we didn't know anything about anything supernatural, about anything that's beyond our visual scope, Maybe they're like all around. It's just our vision, the scope of our vision is only this spectrum, and maybe they're in this spectrum, but for a time, because I only saw them that one time, saw her that one time, the spectrum opened up. And this was right after Dharma, and there we saw it. And we didn't make that much of it after we were like wowed and amazed. Then that was the end. But then later I saw other things. One of the kids that lived with us went out. We had a little pond right outside my window. Never with a waterfall. Never have a waterfall right outside your bedroom window. It's beautiful to look at, but once you get it and you're with that, 24/7, 365, I wanted to dismantle that thing so bad. But people loved it. And so I left it. But one day, he was outside at night and they had a curfew, and he was out after the curfew. And he was over by the waterfall. And I don't know whether he was sneaking in or sneaking out. But he saw something move down low by where the water fell, and then it collected in a man-made pond. And it said, "Hey, watch out, don't step on me." And he looked down, he saw this little man, and he started yelling and screaming. Um, and the curfew was 10 o'clock. I think this was like around midnight. He was yelling and screaming and came beating on the door because I was like, if you're not hit by curfew, see you tomorrow. We can talk about it. And he's beating on the door, and Pontevedra opened the door, and he was so scared. And he told us a story about um, the little man, is what we just call him, by the palm. Of course, he never missed a curfew after that. So maybe that was just the benefit of it. There was another time he saw a white ball, like just luminous ball in the tree, and that scared him. He sees these things at night. If you see him at night, that means you're out past your curfew. And so sometimes something can happen just for the sake of broadening someone's capacity to maybe not at that time, but later when something happens or they encounter something directly, they can make room for it. That's all I'm saying. So I want to talk about two things. This morning, Kay and Pontevedra and I were talking, and I'm always talking about I'm going to write a book, and someone's been keeping notes for years. But the truth is, my story is so horrible that I have to wait till all my family members die. My mother didn't tell me her story until she was dying. And she said, "I didn't want you to know before because you tell everything." And that's almost true. It's not entirely true. There's some things about myself I don't tell you. But mostly I tell things so that for those who think that they're the worst, or that they've gone through the worst, or that their family is the most dysfunctional, or that they think they can't overcome something that happened in their life, or they're still living in the past about what happened and they're imputing it on now, or they feel guilt, or they feel shame, or they feel, so I tell these things to give you an example of how to deal with yourself to overcome these voices in our head from times past, and also how to address and handle whatever may currently be arising in your life, because there's a certain fearlessness that's required to overcome the oppression and the suffering of this Saha world. And if you don't have it, you can't overcome, not because liberation was not possible, but because one had not developed their muscles enough to be able and developed enough fortitude to overcome. So sometimes we encounter different teachers that have different qualities. And one might say, well, that person's not like my last teacher. He was so loving and he was so kind, and this one is like, just like on me like this, leaving me nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. But every teacher has a particular quality that may come forth. Like some might think I'm hard taskmaster, but somebody else might think, as a matter of fact, I know some think, oh, she's so kind, she's so sweet. She gives me anything I ask for because I understand the deep, deep hole of suffering that they are in. But for another one, I can see they're right on the brink of stepping out. Like, you need to go on and handle your business. And, so everybody's perception is their own. So we have to be careful of thinking we know and casting, typecasting another person. Maybe we're only seeing that which we can see from the place we are sitting. Or maybe we can only hear that which is love in disguise, promoting you to what you're fully capable of. And so the Buddha says it's like really worthless or fruitless to try to figure these kinds of things out. He says, don't waste your time with that. Just if you hear anything that's true that you can use, you use it. And just let everything else just walk on by. But he gives us some ways that we can work at training our mind so that it can be like this. And so I'd like to read you a passage today. It says, when a noble disciple contemplates upon the enlightened one or holy beings, at that time, his mind is not enwrapped in greed, nor in hatred, nor in delusion. So when I was playing one of the English chants we do from the Shakyamuni Puja a few minutes ago, oh blessed one, Shakyamuni Buddha. You like it? I like it. For a while, we would play it at every time we sat in, and we've been going through such a rigorous training lately. I thought I should start to soften it up a little bit. Kind of like we've had a rain and we let it rain, but now to just kind of soften it so that that rain can actually soak in and not run off. Right? But you notice that when that was playing, it was almost impossible for your mind to be in a certain space. That one could yield to that. And something they may be trying to do, like to be in a space of more kindness, or to be more calm, to be peaceful and at ease, to feel encouraged, to feel empowered, but not in a kind of way, but in a kind of lifting kind of way. How that could naturally arise, right? And one wasn't doing anything but just tending to, inclining one's ear to that. And our practice can be like that. It's just that some things we resist because we're not ready to give that up, or we don't think it takes all that, or that's not the way I was taught, or whatever. And that's the kind of discrimination that the Buddha encouraged us to abandon. So that we should always be open to hearing some good news, some good way, even if it's not in our usual jargon or language. And that if we could just feel into it, coming out of the dark ages into the age of enlightenment, we picked up some good ideas and some not good ideas. And one was around intellect and rational thought. And I remember yesterday I was listening to Sanjay Gupta, and he was talking about something. And he was talking about diet, and he was saying that, what we have discovered now. So now that we were able in controlled environments to produce certain results, it's now science, where before it wasn't considered science, things like around health, cellular health, eating healthy, and so forth. But now the scientists, just about every doctor you go to now, they want to hook you up with some vitamins and have you see a nutritionist and do all of these things. Because now that through their own mechanisms of proof, they have come to accept something as true. Now we all can say it is true. But many of us knew that this was true without science figuring it out. And if we wait for our own intellectual acumen to actually come up to a place that something's not true until we figure out how to verify that it is true, then it's not true, then we will miss most of this. What is possible to know through direct experience. So I looked up in Webster's dictionary and in Britannica, on Britannica.com, the difference between intellect and intuition. And it said that intellect is something that is reasoned through the mind, and the mind gives proof of its veracity. But then it said that intuition was knowledge obtained by direct experience. Now, I find it curious that in all of the major religions, that they speak of direct experience. So, and through that direct experience, we inform the intellect. And I wonder if we shouldn't think about it more. Because we use our mind to try to understand what is happening and put it in some kind of shape or order or form that that we can explain. And if I can explain it, then it's possibly a real thing. But if I can't explain it, if it doesn't make sense to my ordinary mind, then I reject it. But they have asked us to not use the mind to discriminate in this way. That if we do, we're not going to reach the goal. This period. It'll become what Brother Vince called no use Dharma. He said, don't practice no use Dharma. So he's saying that there must be a corresponding direct experience that lets you know the truth and the depth of things. And then you bring the mind, and your mind grows and expands. Its capacity enlarges, and one freedom becomes more sure. One can have a fullness of experience. It doesn't have to be stuck in awe. It could just be stuck in the true expansive nature of reality. And we start to understand really what life is. So, and we start to have our own words for it as well. So Buddha mentioned something, a Buddha master mentioned something one time in a talk, and you'll hear it at some point when I get to that particular discourse. He said, call it what you want. You know, he said, I simply call it life. Life doesn't mean in this sense the life that we live, the things we get up and do every day and think and say, and not that. He said, but the reason why when one understands this, he talks about never dying. And yet everybody dies. So he can't be talking about dying in the sense that we talk about dying, like we live this life and we die, you know? But he's talking about life itself is like the grand ultimate reality, whether it's in this world, whether it's in one of the heavenly realms, whether it's in one of the hell realms, or whether it's in the pure abodes. And that is what has no coming and going. That spark. That is when one has mastery over it, can come and go at will. That is something so far beyond, same word, life, but so far beyond our ordinary conception of life, which is just being born here and dying, or the mind or mentality and materiality separated. And one goes back to its elements, earth, air, fire, and water. But the life continues in some shape, fashion, form, or no shape, no form, but still there. All the time, potential for manifestation. At will, not through the power or the force of cause and effect. That's what Buddha nature is. If we can understand it like that, then dropping off this body would be no more than changing clothing or choosing to not wearing clothes. One time I went, I know everybody's been skinny dipping, but I went, I don't know what you call it. I went, it was springtime, and it was a spring shower, and everything was in blue, and it was so beautiful. And it was just as dark as becoming light. And I was in my 20s, and I went streaking. That's what we called it, streaking. So I was just running naked, you know, outside in the rain. And it was so liberating. It felt so free, you know, that I was thinking, why do we have to wear clothes? But I know why, because of our own mind. And I was sad that day that we couldn't enjoy the freedom without having things, especially if you have a big waist, like I have a big waist, you know, and so everything's all, I'm always aware of if it's not a smock, I'm always aware. That's one reason why, one aversion I have to the robes, because you have to wrap them around your waist. If you got a big waist, it goes like this. So when you wrap right here, it slips down like that, and then you step it on the front of the robe. So I just made something that was like a smock. Somebody said, I see you changed the Theravada robe. I said, no, I didn't change the Theravada robe. I just made a robe. And that feels comfortable to me. There's nothing in the robe unless I have it on, then it's me in the robe. You know, so I'm not going to get hung up on a robe. And so he talks about contemplating upon enlightened ones and the holy beings, because at that time, your mind is not enwrapped in greed, hatred, or delusion. So that's a tool you can use right there when something starts to arise that's perturbing you. You start to lose your sense of peace or ease because of some vicissitude of life that you have to deal with. He said, if you get in the habit of turning your mind not when you don't need it, not when you need it, but when you don't need it. That becomes the resting place of the mind. It becomes hiding, not in the sense of escaping from, but it becomes like where you're setting, that's your base. When you're not using your phone or whatever, they have a base, you can set it on the recharging station. That becomes your base, your recharging station. Not when you're trying to be good, just all the time. That's just your recharging station. You don't have to read anything into it. Like priding yourself on when you do your chanting or whatever. That's just your charging station. Otherwise, we get caught up in what we do, even the good things that we do, and they become a prison for us. So just think that's just your. And what will happen, it says, at such time, his mind is rightly directed, and with a rightly directed mind, the noble disciple gains enthusiasm for the goal, enthusiasm for unbinding, enthusiasm for the goal. Enthusiasm makes you think about, ponder, talk about, reflect on, contemplate, want to be around things that lead towards the goal. He also gains enthusiasm for the Dharma. And there are lots of things that we like to do, and there's nothing wrong with doing things. Because we do things we like to do, or we do them happily, at least, And after a while, you'll find that doing Dharma things make you happy. You just want to do them the same way you wanted to use your time doing something else. That one gains the delight derived, from the Dharma. Sometimes I just laugh for no reason because I have a relationship with the Dharma. And sometimes I laugh for a reason because I'm being challenged. And I remember I have a relationship with the Dharma. In him thus delighted, joy arises. If I say to myself, I shall put on a happy face, then shall my countenance be changed. One has to say to oneself, I shall put on a happy face. And when do I say that? I say that when I don't feel like putting on a happy face. Not when I do, but when I don't. So when we talk about cultivating and talk about walking out the Dharma, it's these kinds of things. It's not these big, deep, heady, wordy, obscure kinds of concepts about the Dharma. It's not using poly words, but it's really developing a sense of the true meaning of the word and being able to live in it. It's like a washing by the water of the word. It says, to one who is joyful, body and mind become calm. Calm in body and mind, he feels at ease. And if at ease, the mind finds concentration, singleness of thought. I was talking with a person, and his mind is just playing double dutch. He's on this side and this side, this side and this side, this side and this side. So concentration is not just being able to concentrate or to be still when you sit on the pillow, because he's good at that. It's where the mind goes when he's off the pillow, being captured by the things that he sees and hears and tastes and touches and smells, and mostly by the things that he thinks. Because at that time that he should or could be contemplating upon the virtue of the enlightened ones and the holy beings, his mind is recollecting the times that the women that come into his life and the fine dining that he has and all of these things. So it's just like unwise attention. And you know how sometimes when you think about something you shouldn't think about, you already know you shouldn't think about it, and you say, I'm just going to think about it for a little bit. I'm just going to think about it for just 1 minute. Just want to put a pin in it, and I need to get to this point, and then I'm going to put a pin and I'm going to let it go, But that's how we do. And right there is where we stumble and fall. He said, but if you contemplate upon the enlightened ones and the holy beings, then your mind will be free for that time. And such a one is called a noble disciple among humanity gone wrong. A noble disciple who among humanity gone wrong has attained to what is right. Who among a humanity beset by troubles dwells free of troubles. So if we incite others by our own energy, and people are asking what we can do, and we do all that we can do. I mean, some is like all the money in the world is not gonna put a leg back on a child that was blown off by a bomb. So I'm saying we need to send money to whatever groups we feel are actually able to use the money to get there to help and support. Yes, we should do that. Yes, we can make our views known to our government and our elected officials, about what the will of the people, if they're following the will of the people, what that is. Yes, we should do that. I understand the president's of Ukraine's comments when they offered to help get, civilians out of the country. They offered to get him out so that he'd be safe. He said, I'm not looking for a ride, he was telling them what help he felt he needed. And these are tough calls, especially for those who've taken up the mantle of non-harming, So there may be some things that we can't do. For instance, I don't think I could go to war. Of course, I haven't had a bomb dropped in my backyard. And if one was, you have to ask me when, because I'm not sure where my resolve is. I'm not sure what I could do. So I'm not going to fault people for doing what they need to do to, protect their families. I just hope I'm steeped enough in the Dharma that when such life taking measures come knocking on my door, that I can walk in my highest resolve, but it's not going to just happen. I have to develop to that place. So everybody works on issues according to their own capacity. And just maybe in the whole scheme of things, since there is evil in the world, and since there are minds that hurt and harm, that there are some who stand for those of us who would give our life. And that gives us more time to work at bringing some higher level things into the consciousness of man. There are lots of ways that we can serve, but at some point, I could take Sukha, for example. She's part of some, I might say it wrong, but some task force that whenever there's a catastrophe, like a big one, like a flood or something like that, she's on the first line of defense, they call her. So she's like, I can't be in Dharma Sunday. I've been dispatched to, and she packs up and she goes. But there's some point that one recognizes there's always going to be a flood, always going to be a disaster, always going to be somebody sick, always going to be somebody dying, always going to be, because that goes with samsara, And is there any other way now that I understand? My heart has been pricked. What's the highest and best way I can show love? We think love is always on a certain level, but sometimes love is hard. Sometimes showing love, it doesn't feel like love at all, but it's the thing that needs to be done. And the greatest love we can have for humanity, I feel, which is why I'm in this business, I feel, is to share the Dharma with you. As the Buddha felt that way too. And he elected not to become a monarch of men, but a universal monarch, bringing the Dharma. Now that means he's not going to reach most of the people. So it's going to be long suffering here. That goes with the territory. Don't like it, then do the things that you have to do that there won't be a reappearance here. You won't come here again. The many, many worlds, in many, many universes that we could take up if we had the frequency, the corresponding conduct to be there, to abide there. So since I know that, I opt for that. So for me, to live is okay, but to die is gain. That's how I feel about the Dharma. So he went on and he talked. He said, spaciousness of mind, luminous that can connect with the higher realms. And we call that the higher frequencies of the universe. And that's how, who among a humanity beset by troubles dwells free of the troubles. So he's given us the highest and best way to deal with things, to deal with the issue of being female in a misogynist world, to a way to deal with being a person of color in a world where white is seen as right and the dominant power, in a world where, so it leaves us with no excuse around any pet peeve. I was on a part of a retreat yesterday on women leadership. And I kept saying to someone, I said, I don't want to do this. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in talking about women leaders. And I kept putting them off, and they kept emailing. And the sister, bless her heart, she kept calling and said, I'm concerned about you because you haven't answered. And I couldn't decide whether I was going to do it because it's like completely off my radar. I don't want to talk about engaged Buddhism. I don't want to talk about engaged Buddhism. Maybe that's where I started, trying to put my, bring my actions in line with my true heart. But I don't want to stay there. Have I learned nothing in 2.5 decades? But you get pigeonholed in the world, And so I started off my talk with the Lord is in his holy temple. That's Christian scriptures, not Buddhist. Let all the earth keep silent before him. And this was about women. And so, and then they had to wait for two other speakers before I got my chance to talk. And, but I knew they were sitting there, and we were talking about things and, just all where we have differences and divide about opinion, but none of that is important. But there is a way that we can come into some kind of accomplishment and some kind of power that we can really impact the world in ways that we don't know that we can. And so I want to end with an introduction to the 37 factors of enlightenment or requisites for enlightenment. And in many discourses, the Buddha talked about the significance, of developing these factors. And he said, monks, I say to you, this is in the Dignity and Kindness of Mahaparinibbana, just as he was leaving for that body. He said, I say to you that these teachings of which I have direct knowledge and which I have made known to you, these you should thoroughly learn, cultivate, develop, and frequently practice so that the life of purity may be established and may long endure for the welfare and the happiness of the multitudes out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, the well-being, and the happiness of gods and men. That sounds like the Bodhisattva file. Yeah, it does. So it lets me know that Mahayana is not a line or a school, and Theravada is not a line or a school, and that Chan or Zen is not a line or a school, but it's different ones who had reached different levels of awakening, and they taught from that perspective. So all we're having here at Hartwood is a change of perspective. It's not a new thing. It's just going a little bit deeper around some things. And he said, what are these teachings that I say to you that you should embark upon and cultivate, develop, and frequently practice so that the life of purity may be established and long endure for the welfare and the happiness of the multitudes out of compassion for the world, for the benefit and well-being and happiness of gods and men? He said they are these 37 factors, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 right efforts, the 4 constituents of psychic power, the 5 faculties, the 5 powers, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the Noble Eightfold Path. So we're good with the 4 foundations of mindfulness. We're working on the 4 right efforts. I can see the development, keeping unarisen, unwholesome states from arising and subduing arisen, unwholesome states, fostering wholesome states that have not yet arisen and maintaining them. I see that. But there is a reward for that, for the 4 right efforts. And what follows the 4 right efforts are the 4 constituents of psychic power. So now we have to learn something new, see something from a different perspective. And there's the opportunity to gain ground. Why? For the welfare and the happiness of the multitudes out of compassion, for the world, for the benefit, well-being, and the happiness of gods and men. But see, we're traveling far from home now, you see. And that can be kind of scary for some people. But I say to you, don't be afraid, because this is the path. We are capable far more than we think we're capable of. And in closing, I'd like to I think we're going to undertake the next, soon as we finish something, some class we're in, as soon as we finish it, we're going to study the 37 factors of enlightenment, just step by step. And one can see within each step, the steps within each step, and one can know where one is. And one can also decide where one wants to go, you know. But I want to end with just in the first foundation, or the first 4 foundations of mindfulness. And one being contemplation of mind, you know. And maybe we can be thinking about that this week. And that contemplation of mind, just as mind, is like recognizing what state one's mind is in at all times. So that you know that right now, this is a mind with greed or without greed. So the decision I'm making right now is based on, you know, greed, or it's not based on greed. A mind with anger or without anger. You can do, the 2 people can do the same thing. One thing would be a right action and one would be a wrong action, depending upon whether they were filled with anger and that's the reason they did it or not. A mind with delusion or mind without delusion. Delusion, you could call that like false hope. Just don't want to face reality. So you're hoping against hope because you just don't want to deal with it. Something like that. Whether this is a lazy mind, you know, or whether it's a distracted mind, or whether I'm doing this with a developed mind or an undeveloped mind, an inferior mind or a superior mind. Now, to determine that, we have to know what the Buddha said constitutes superior thinking, you know, or inferior thinking. So we might have to do a little Googling. That's what's so great about Google, you know, finds things for you fast. You don't have to go in the library and pour through 15 books. What is a concentrated or an unconcentrated mind? A mind free from defilement or not free from defilement. Sometimes we think we're doing the right thing because it's the best we know how to do it. That point, that's okay. But there comes a time when I want to know, not just because I think it's the right thing to do, but I want to ponder what rightness would look like in this situation. You know? Now, I don't want to know, I don't ask anybody. Sometimes people ask somebody, but they don't really want to follow it because they already know. They're hoping they ask the right person who will agree with them that what they want to do is the thing that should be done. Because that's just our unenlightened nature, you know. But we'll start to know all the time what kind of mind we have. And somebody can be thinking you're so good and you know that's not true. And somebody can be thinking the worst of you, but your feelings aren't hurt because you know that's not true. And that's all this path does. So don't be afraid. There's no danger in the water. That's an old Christian song. There's no danger in the water. Okay, so I'd like to cut off the screen. And if I could have, is this right with 113? Can you stay for 8 minutes? Long enough for me to read something? I thank all of you that joined us today. May you be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to you, no danger. May you always be able to meet with the inevitable difficulties of life. If you consider yourself part of the virtual Sangha of Heartwood, and you'd like to know what we discussed today when we turn the cameras off, you can send and how can they do this? They can send an email. I will make it. Okay, yeah. Send our request to at heartwoodrefuge.org, because this conversation is just for like the Heartwood song.